Hey guys, GhazzyTV here, welcome into my YouTube channel. Hello. This is the build guide for the Soulwrest, and it is designed to be a league starter build guide. And I'm going to go through the basic stuffs of this build real quick here. Basically, the build is designed around the item called Soulwrest, and there's a few different things you can do with this build. There's a few problems with it. There's also some really nice pros with it as well. First off, the stuff is very cheap. It's a very common unique, and you only need 6 sockets to get your links going with it. And with this in mind, there's a few things you can do to make it run really well. I decided to take the template using my Lich Queen build guide, which is considered to be the high budget version of this, because Soulwrest is so cheap and you don't even need to have the other stuffs linked whatsoever to make this build really well. So I took the template of the Lich Queen, and then I made that build slightly squishier, but a lot faster. So this is a really nice clear speed build. However, in hardcore, I can't really recommend this build above tier 10 maps. You can do it. You could do deathless tier 16 maps. Bosses can be quite difficult, but I felt personally that it was rather squishy, even if I was a bit underleveled. I think that the tier 15 or 16 maps are going to be pretty risky in a hardcore league, but for softcore it's perfectly fine. In hardcore you can simply run this build till tier 10-ish maps and then rework the build into a Lich Queen or whatever other type of summon build or other which kind of builds that you would like to play. This is a Necromancy build, and the links I'm using in my Soulwrest is Summon Phantasm Kill, and this is not needed, but it does increase the cap from 10 Phantasms from the staff up to 20. So this is a mandatory support gem. I have faster casting because they don't work with Spell Echo, and then I'm using control destructions, minion damage, GMP, and faster proj. And this is only because I'm using them as a clear speed minions. Now you could use slower proj instead of faster projectile to make them deal more single target damage. I didn't feel that this was needed. Another issue with the Phantasm is that they're not very tanky, which is why I decided to augment the build and run it with extra things as solar guards as my specters to help with the clearing, as sometimes the Phantasms would die in higher level delve depths, for example. But in general, I haven't really encountered any major issues with this. Some bosses with a lot of AoE damage can be somewhat annoying, but with the help of having your solar guards clearing for you as well, I didn't have any issues with it. Speaking of specters, I'm using Ray Spectre with the Elemental Focus, GMP, and Spell Echo. Now, obviously, the Elemental Focus could be Control Destructions. It can also be minion damage, or should be minion damage. But you can run this 4-link anywhere you want, or even in your chest piece if you want to. But the endgame items would eventually turn into an Elder item with the support gems. Socketed gems are supported by 18 or higher minion damage. And since I'm using Solar Guards who have an AoE splash on their fireballs, the concentrated effect is actually helpful. The third addition to this could be a thing called that Socketed Gems gives 30% more elemental damage. This is from an Essence craft, and those helmets are ridiculously expensive. Now, we have been testing this build here on the stream, and we have been showing off when I'm using 2-linked specters or 3-linked specters without GMP, and it was still breezing through content without problems. I have a 6-link on my Vis Mortis, that's the skeletons, which I'm going to talk about now. And we showed the build using 2-link specters and never using the skeletons. It was still breezing through content, so you don't need these things. Speaking of Vis Mortis, I'm using this mainly for the extra specter to help with the extra approach with that. I'm also having Unholy Might, which is affecting the Phantasms, which is really cool when it comes to increased clear speed. Now, again, you can use whatever you want in here. You can have utility links and whatever. I decided to go with skeletons. However, I've not done Uberlab, which is why I'm having some issues dealing with tier 15 or 16 bosses with this build right now, because the last Uberlab for me was to go through the Bone Sculptor node. I'll talk about the nodes in a minute. So I decided to go with skeletons to help with the single target because everything else was perfect with clearing, but this is something you can do whatever you want with. If you don't want to utilize too much focus on specters, you're able to perhaps change them out and run with golems if you so wish. You're able to do zombies instead of skeletons. There's so many options to how you can play with this. If you have zombies, you can also get some taunt on hit jewels, which can help a lot with bosses. Again, there's a lot of options of free room to do whatever you please with this build. However, choosing another minion to go with a 6-link in here does cause some socket starvation, which is why I'm using 2 Unset Ring. One for Hatred, which is not on a Generosity, which it in general should be when you're using skeletons, but I didn't have room for it. And then I have a Convocation, which I'm using every now and then on my other ring. Speaking of the stats, it's just life and resistances on the rares. As you can see, it's just life, res, and there's life, res. On the helmet, it's the socket, of course, but life and resistances. And then a ton of dexterity on the amulet to make up for the lack of dexterity, to make sure I can use all my skill gems. Gloves, same thing there, life, dexterity, and boots is actually a number of extra specters, but you can use Bones of Ulr if you don't have the crafted boots from Delve in future leagues. Belt is a Hibiscus Leech because Rampage is fucking broken. More information about Rampage in the written forum thread, which is linked in the description below. Socket-wise, I'm having a cast damage taken linked with Immortal Call, and my preferred combo with this is level 3 cast damage taken with a level 1 or up to 5 Immortal Call to make sure it procs. And then I have a high level Flame Dash and a high level Orb of Storms to avoid having them locked in the cast damage taken. This is for Elemental Equilibrium, and Flame Dash is for mobility. And even without faster casting, it's actually not that bad when it comes to using it. It's actually pretty fast with the recent buffs to it. In my boots, I have Flesh Offering together with Desecrate, Cascade, as well as Increased Duration. Now, this is to get 3 corpses with my Desecrate, and then Flesh Offering doesn't get affected by it, but the Increased Duration does. And that's basically it. On top of this, we have the flask being a Heat Quicksilver flask. I have a Ruby's Concoction, which I'm going to talk about a little bit when it comes to the skill tree. And then I have a Jade flask, which I'm using to get facing for free. And then 2 life flasks. Now, obviously, it's enough in general to have 1 life flask, which means you can get another utility flask in it as well if you want to. But that's basically the links and the gear for this character and what makes it so good. I'm going to start with the Ascendancy nodes and how to progress this character when you start. I'm going to go through this real quick and then show you the gameplay right after. When you start off this character, you basically want to pick up Invoker and rush into Soul Weaver. This will allow you to get Spectres going as soon as possible, and this will help you clear through content super fast. Once you get the Soulwrest staff, I think it's level 62, you're able to breeze through content so fast, it's insane. And then I take Mistress of Sacrifice because I'm manually casting Flesh Offering rather than using something like Bubonic Trail, but that is also another option. Again, like I said before, there's a lot of free option and room for your own playstyles and what you prefer to do with this build. So you can use Bubonic Trails, which are destroying corpses as you run over them, allowing you to automatically summon the Phantasm. I'm doing it manually because I'm using Mistress of Sacrifice. I still have to refresh the Mistress of Sacrifice buff for myself, so I figured why would I ruin another Spectre if I'm still going to be casting Flesh Offering. And as I mentioned before, the Uber Lab for me was to go with Bone Sculptor to allow me to have better single target damage from the build. However, I decided to do this guide without it because I want to show it as a low budget approach, but there's a lot of room for improvement. You can even go for faster clearing by having Puppet Master or Commander Darkness. As I said before, you can go with a zombie approach, and I am currently using the From Dust Duel, even if I haven't sorted Uberlab, which is a must if you're going with a skeleton approach, and you kind of want to have the zombie duel if you're going for the zombie approach. Another must-have with the Spectre approach is the Unending Hunger, which is making it insanely good. Skill tree itself, it's just minion damage, life, duel, minion damage. Take the left route because you don't need the accuracy with the Bone Sculptor if you're choosing the skeleton approach. Life everywhere. Get the Grave Pact, get life, get a jewel slot, which I haven't even socked because I'm a fucking retard. Get more life, and then more life, and then more damage. And that's pretty much it. It's just life everywhere, and then jewels. However, I did take the staff block nodes here. And this is because I felt that the build was somewhat squishy. And to sort that, unlike the Lich Queen, who's wielding a shield and having that approach around it with the block from the shield and everything, I decided to actually give this build a little bit of a nudge in the right direction in terms of defensive layers, and giving it a little bit extra block with these 4 nodes, and on top of that having the Ruby's Concoction. That's really it. It's very straightforward. The build is pretty much a template taken from the Lich Queen build and then put into action with a staff rather than having a shield and a one-hander and leap slamming around. So I'm going to show you these 3 maps real quick. I'm going to talk about it as we do it. Usually I start off the map with a Desecrate, put up 2 Flesh Offerings, another Desecrate, 1 Flesh Offering to have as many corpses as possible exploded, put the flask down, and then you just run. You see up here with the 20, I'm literally just running through the content at this point, and Rampage will be stacking up, making me faster. And every now and then I just turn around and click Flesh Offering to make sure that I have everything. Now, as you can see, the HP of the build is pretty low. You don't have that much of a big of a EHP pool, but in general, the build is basically you just run through content. At level 80, I was going through a tier 16 map with a vulnerability and elemental weakness, and even then, without being capped for the resistances, I did it deathlessly. However, the bosses can be somewhat sketchy, as I mentioned before, without having the skeletal approach with the Uber Lab. But I think that if you want to do this in hardcore, you're going to have to be a little bit more careful at tier 10 or higher maps. Now, this Mesa map is a tier 11, and it's working perfectly fine with this approach. And I'm going to show you some higher tier maps as well to show you as well. And then on bosses, just pop all some skeletons, pop everything, Orb Storms, get some Desert Raids out, skeletons, and he's gonna die. It's very straightforward. I can't stress how easy this build is to play. So for the sake of showing it, we can do the Plaza map, and we can remove Spell Echo and Elemental Focus. This means that I have a 4-link helmet, Spectres, without the use of optimal links, no Spell Echo, and there's a constant. This is really bad links. Spectres right now with GMP, Spectres, Conk Effect, and mini damage. This is horrible. I'm not going to use my skeletons, at least not till the boss, just to show you how easy this can clear a tier 14 Plaza map without having these things. This would be basically having a 0-linked Vis Mortis. Same approach with the start running, and now my Spectres are completely fucking horribly shit, and this is how the build behaves. And it's basically the exact same thing. There's almost no difference in terms of efficiency that what this build can do. As you can see, the skeletons might be a little bit different as I'm not using any of them. This is still without Uber Lab. Clear speed is the exact same. The only thing that you're going to see is that the bosses will not be as easily handled. I do want to pick that up actually. And that's basically it. It's a very straightforward build. This is what the build looks like with maybe 20 chaos budget. Clearing Plaza map without problems. Like, there's no issues. And as you're clearing more, your rampage stacks up and your build will be able to handle more and more content and handle better packs and whatnot, even bosses, because you get so much damage and you get movement speed as well from the big approach of these rampage stacks. Let's find the boss. We're gonna do the boss without skeletons just to show you the difference. A bit squishy, as you can see, but still manageable at a tier 14 map. Just to show you again, it's Ray Spectre GMP together with Conk Effect and minion damage. Not even Spell Echo. 6 socket Soulwrest. My 0-linked Vis Mortis, because I'm not having the skeletons linked. Able to do this without problems. And the budget for this is non-existent. For the sake of you guys wanting to see more gameplay for this, for a build guide, I'm going to run this map with somewhat of a higher budget approach, and that's basically just having a 6-link skeleton to it. Acid Lake, I don't remember which boss that is. Isn't that the Elemental? I think it is actually. So basically the only difference is that I sometimes throw out another skeleton, especially on boxes, to help out with that real quick, but there's no difference in playstyles. I'm barely using the skeletons as it is, and the only difference really is the Spectres getting a bit better. So once you got to the point with the skill tree, as you saw earlier, once you get to that point, all you do is get jewels. And the jewels priority should be in terms of having minion damage, preferably the mod that says minion damage. Increase minion damage when you've used a minion skill recently, because Flesh Offering is a minion skill. And it gives the most damage, even better than the flat damage numbers. And that's basically it. It's an extremely straightforward, solid League starter build. You can do this at any league. The items are very cheap. Just be careful if you're playing hardcore, as this is, again, it's a League starter build. It's not a very tanky build. And if you feel like you want to kill Uber Elder and whatnot, this build should be able to handle that type of content. But ultimately, you have to remember that it is not a tanky build. So be careful if you're playing hardcore for the Uber Elder fights and whatnot. I have been told that it's confirmed to kill Uber Elder, or Elder at least, in the softcore without problems. I think that Uber Elder might be a little bit messy with this build personally. But again, it's a League starter design build. You do whatever the fuck you want after that. Anyways, I'm gonna go to the boss and finalize this, I guess. But yeah, if you guys have any comments or any questions, pop them down below in Yeah, like I said, very squishy build. That's a nice ending to it, isn't it? Either way, like I said, I don't think that this build is something yet you should have in hardcore above tier 10 maps, but it works really well as a clear speed build. It's very, very... Well, even lost a Spectre. Hallelujah. Either way, let me know in the comments below what you guys think about the build. Have a great night, stay safe, keep rocking. Until next time, see you in the stream, boys.